Hey there, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here online. If we haven't met yet, I am Pastor Josh Pontius, coming to you from Community of Grace Lutheran Church right here in Peoria, Arizona. And it's great that you've joined us for this message series that we are calling Grace-Filled Generosity. And we're talking about giving thankfully, not fearfully, what it means to be excited and giving thanks as we give. And one thing that you might be giving thanks for right now is that for 2 weeks in a row, I'm not the one preaching. And so in just a moment, Brita, our women's ministry director, will be joining us. Hope you enjoy the message.
Hey friends, I'm going to let you in on a little conundrum I've been wrestling with. So when someone says, a penny for your thoughts, and you put your 2 cents in, what happens to the other penny? Right? Don't you wonder about that too? But seriously, let's talk about that phrase, my 2 cents. Normally, when you offer your 2 cents, what you really are doing is offering your opinion. Instead of just saying, this is what I think, we offer our 2 cents more tentatively, maybe more humbly, in order to downplay our opinion or to soften the blow our words might have on our audience. Now, according to AI, one possible source of this saying comes from a scene in the Bible. Maybe you've heard this story before. Jesus sat down near the collection box in the temple and watched as the crowds dropped in their money. Many rich people put in large amounts. Then a poor widow came and dropped in 2 small coins. Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I tell you the truth, this poor widow has given more than all the others who are making contributions. For they gave a tiny part of their surplus, but she, poor as she is, has given everything she had to live on. As Jesus watched this widow, she literally put her 2 cents into the offering box. And not just 2 cents, but her very last 2 cents. And for those of you who appreciate a few more details, the coins she gave were called lepta. They were the smallest coins in circulation in Palestine at the time. Our word leaf comes from this word, and it's a great description of these coins that the widow gave, which were very lightweight and very thin. The widow's 2 cents didn't even add up to a penny. Those 2 small coins were worth about 1/64 of the daily wage at the time. In the temple where Jesus was sitting, there were 13 trumpet-shaped offering boxes made out of metal. As wealthy families put in their contributions, the sound would have alerted everyone to the size of their gift. When the widow dropped in her 2 tiny, lightweight coins, they would have barely made a sound. Yet, this widow's 2 cents were her everything. She held nothing back. This dear woman was all in. Our sermon today is titled, Giving Thankfully, Not Fearfully. We could just stop right here and assume that the widow was giving from a place of gratitude to God and that no one coerced her to give up her last 2 coins. But let's not stop here, because you deserve to know the rest of the story. Prior to the widow's offering, the Gospel of Mark tells us about 6 conflicts that took place between Jesus and the religious leaders of his day. These stories are told in Mark chapters 11 and 12, in case you want to look them up later. In response to these confrontations, Jesus says this to his disciples: "Beware of these teachers of religious law, for they like to parade around in flowing robes and receive respectful greetings as they walk in the marketplaces. And how they love the seats of honor in the synagogues and the head table at banquets. Yet they shamelessly cheat widows out of their property and then pretend to be pious by making long prayers in public. Because of this, they will be more severely punished." This warning from Jesus makes it clear that he can see through their religious showtime. He's not impressed with them the way others are, because Jesus sees what motivates them. He sees beneath the surface. He knows what makes them tick. Jesus is telling his disciples here that motivation matters, and he offers them a glimpse into the way God thinks about us, that the why beneath our actions matters more to God than what we actually do. Now, we know that our actions give others clues about why we do what we do. The thing is, though, only you can truly know the why behind your own behavior. Well, you and Jesus, that is. There's been a lot of research done about what drives people to behave the way they do, and many of those studies have found 3 emotions to be at the core of human behavior. Fear, which often shows up in our lives as anxiety, anger, and shame, which can look and feel a lot like sadness. Now, this isn't to say that we all walk around feeling sad, angry, and fearful all the time. Actually, the study of personality suggests that these 3 emotions operate in the background, affecting our behavior and decision-making, and we may not be aware of them at all. If we're honest with ourselves, and if we're willing to look deeply, we each gravitate toward one of these 3 more than the other 2. It's part of the human condition. Jesus looked at the religious leaders of his day and saw people who were motivated by fear, anger, and shame. These were men who, according to Jewish law, didn't receive a paycheck for their services, which made them dependent upon the gifts of others, their offerings, for their livelihood. Of course, there were exceptions, but many of these leaders preyed on others, including widows, taking advantage of their position in the temple for their own personal benefit. Jesus tells his disciples to watch out for these guys who love to parade around in public, who love to be seen in all the right places, seeking applause and advancing themselves in others' eyes, who pretend to be holy while shamelessly cheating the vulnerable for their own selfish gain. Jesus condemned these religious leaders for seeking to honor themselves instead of the God they professed to serve. Jesus seems to be telling his followers, and this includes you and me, to beware of those who are too loud, too obvious, too greedy, because this is what it looks like to be motivated by fear, anger, and shame. On the other hand, by stark contrast, Jesus sees the poor widow, despite the fact that she seems to be so quiet, so inconspicuous, and so selfless. He says her offering was more than all the others, both in proportion to her resources and in the spirit from which she gave. It's as if Jesus is saying to us, shh, did you hear that? This woman is different. Her giving is motivated by her love for God. Don't let their noise cover up her love. The Apostle Paul understood just how important this is, and that's why he wrote these words in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. If I give everything I own to the poor and even go to the stake to be burned as a martyr, but I don't love, I've gotten nowhere. So no matter what I say, what I believe, and what I do, I'm bankrupt without love. Love never gives up. Love cares more for others than for self. Love doesn't want what it doesn't have. Love doesn't strut, doesn't have a swelled head, doesn't force itself on others, isn't always me first, doesn't fly off the handle, doesn't keep score of the sins of others, doesn't revel when others grovel. Love takes pleasure in the flowering of truth, puts up with anything, trusts God always looks for the best, never looks back, but keeps going to the end. Fear, anger, shame. All three of these exist inside every single one of us. It's part of our makeup. But love, God is love. The more willing that we are to make room in our hearts for God, the more our behavior will be motivated by love, and the greater the impact our 2 cents will have in God's economy. Now, you may feel as if the world says, your 2 cents is not enough. Your opinion doesn't matter. Your gifts are way too small. But our worth in the economy of God isn't measured the same way as our perceived worth in this world is. God doesn't look at things like humans do. Humans see only what is visible to the eyes, but the Lord sees into the heart. Now, on the surface, our giving probably looks the same to each other, no matter the motivation that lies beneath it. But the act of giving reflects our hearts. When you give, like the poor widow gave, holding nothing back in love for God and gratitude for God's gifts, Jesus sees the quiet part, and he says the quiet part out loud. Through the story of the widow's offering, Jesus isn't just teaching us how to give. He's teaching us how to live. And that, my friends, is my 2 cents. What will you do with yours?